All right. Wednesday night. What a day. Another good day this week. Exciting news. We finally got a ruling from Judge Torres on the Ripple case. Man, what a saga. It's nice to have like an ending to that. Obviously, we didn't see just immediate use of XRP. I've always thought that we would see XRP appreciate before the end of the case, so I'm happy to be wrong on that. I think that this frees Ripple up to really work with a lot of their partners here domestically in the U.S. and continue to build out their business in that direction. I feel like that's really been slowed down and probably at the detriment of the U.S. In comparison to the globe and the adoption of distributed ledger technology and ILP and a lot of the other products and services that Ripple has basically been promoting and involved in with other large institutions and enterprises outside the U.S. So excited to see that gray cloud lifted off of them and the asset. XRP obviously has full clarity here in the U.S. Brad did state in his email to shareholders that over the next 60 days the SEC could appeal. I don't think that they're going to. I mean, it's a $125 million fine. Like, they got a piece of flesh on this deal. Ripple spent probably $300 million fighting them. So between that and the final fine, I mean, you're looking at $425 million spent fighting the SEC over the last almost 4 years here. It'll be 4 years in December on the 21st. So, probably, what are we? 3.5 months shy on that. Anyway, super excited to see that. Super nice to see a little green in the portfolio. I think some big things are going to start to move now. I think partnerships that have been on the DL, on the down low, hit the ground will come to the forefront. And, those announcements will probably be, I'm not going to say rapid, but fairly quick, in my opinion. I think that, Ripple's probably going to look to ride this momentum into a direct listing on a public stock exchange. If the Texas Stock Exchange is launched at the end of the year by BlackRock and Citadel, what a story would that be if they had the largest IPO or direct listing or public listing of a company in history, and that was one of the first things that happened on that new stock exchange. I think that would be huge. And I'm biased, I'm here in Texas. So just for my pride in the state, I would love to see that happen. But anyway, yeah, super excited on that. And I do expect, price of secondary sales of their equity to probably jump up now if you were looking to purchase Ripple share. Don't know that you're going to get them as cheap as you would have, maybe just a few weeks ago. I can't speak to private deals that we run in the mastermind, but we're in the market for a lot of that stuff, and we do keep our thumb on the pulse of what things are trading at in the secondary market. So, soft plug if you think that's cool. If you want to hear more about that, Beyond Broke Mastermind. I think we have. It's at the top of the chat here if you guys want to go check it out. So anyway, super exciting there. On the front for institutional custody, for Digital Ascension Group and Digital Wealth Partners. Finally got everything across the line there. Our accounts are being seeded, and we should be able to onboard customers here in the next, hopefully by the end of the week, to be honest with you. Excited about that. We'll have webinars for anybody that signed up for institutional custody to work with us and the management of their assets. You will have to have an LLC or trust in place in order to do that. We do only work with people that have an entity that holds their digital assets. Just a lot of benefits that provides. We actually talked to a guy today about an opportunity that yields somewhere between 20 and 30% cash on cash and they pass 60% of the depreciation on the assets that they use to do that back to the investors. So, realistically, if you're getting that type of cash on cash and that's the depreciation that's being passed back to you, you're not going to owe any taxes on that income for that investment, at least the income off of the investment. The long-term residual or the payout, you would obviously, and hopefully that's, years down the line, so it's in the capital gains area. But that's the name of the game, right? So on the other side of this, there's going to be a lot of people that just choose to liquidate their position in XRP or other digital assets as they appreciate, and just be aware of the tax consequences to that. Sometimes people are okay with those, right? If you're going to be liquidating less than, $550,000 and it's long-term capital gains, I think you're looking at like 15%, not anything crazy. But if you could mitigate it, you'd still want to, right? I mean, that's still meaningful. Could be like $50,000 to $70,000 that you're gonna have to pay in taxes. Thank you, Chadwick, for gifting a membership here on the channel. Anyway, you just want to be aware of those things. You want to position yourself correctly. We have had a huge outreach from people today, getting ready now that this has happened. The same thing happened when we got clarity on XRP last year. We had a big jump in people like, okay, I probably need to get my stuff in order. Price appreciation is probably not too far around the corner. And this time, there's really nothing holding it back at this point. I think that, there's still some, like the US dollar being in the way and that being a global reserve currency, probably still going to sit in the way for a little bit, and that's okay. Did have a call today with an individual. I won't name names. Was very interesting. Mutual connection, which is, I'd just say this. People are so, I'm so grateful to people that I meet that continue to introduce me to well-connected, intelligent people that are working on super cool stuff in the space, and just been really blessed in that part, on this journey. That's one of the things I always ask, though. Also, you don't get what you don't ask for, right? So I'm always at the end of a conversation thinking, who can I introduce you to that's going to be beneficial for whatever you're looking to do. Maybe it's a service or a product you're selling, or you're looking to raise capital, or whatever you're looking to do in the short term, whatever service you're providing. What's the demographic? I always ask people that. So I'm trying to think through on my side. And normally when I'm able to do that and give them a few people, they feel reciprocity, right? And then they throw that back my direction, which is very much appreciated. So I get introductions to people that I sometimes have no business meeting, just honestly. And through that, I'm able to make a connection with them and see the opportunities that they have. One of those individuals, so I'll get back on topic, rambling on. He was telling me that there's something big that's coming out of the Middle East and Africa, and there's going to be some pretty large implications potentially within the next 3 weeks for that announcement. So excited to see, how that manifests. Timelines are always, maybe they happen, maybe they don't. Things get delayed, right? Obviously with Ripple and XRP and a lot of this stuff. That's been the trend, right? So I just take everything with a grain of salt. But if he's right, and it really is in the next 3 weeks, I would expect some huge economic shifts to happen, I guess, by September of this year, which makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think we're on the precipice of some significant change. You've still got the reverse carry trade for the yen unwinding. They've said that they're not going to raise rates in Japan as long as there's market volatility. I don't believe that. They're going to have to save the currency over there. They're really in between a rock and a hard place, and they are going to save their currency. We'll see what we do here in the U.S. Almost everybody believes that they would save treasuries at the expense of the market, and that means that they would hold rates. They would not lower rates. I I think they're going to do the opposite of what everybody else thinks. I think it could be a scenario where the Fed comes out in an emergency meeting, especially if we had another big down day in the market where people are liquidating, their positions in the FANG stocks and other things they've been generating yield on for the past decade to repay those notes in the yen, or liquidating treasuries to do so as well. I think they've paused it long enough that people are like, okay, maybe we're settled out, but I'm probably still uncertain about this, so I want to unwind my exposure, at least some. A lot of people have leveraged about, when I looked at it earlier today, if you just give it a Google, how much has been bet on the reverse carry trade in Japan and their currency in the yen. The exposure is somewhere around $10 trillion globally. Like, that's a big number. Like, that's a lot of leverage and potential problems if that unwinds the wrong way and those people can't pay back that money. So that's a big deal for Japan, their banks that have made these loans to people. It's a big deal for all of the assets that they purchased to be able to generate yield with that borrowed money, right? It has huge implications for oil, which people really don't understand. If you want to go watch Michael Gade, brilliant certified financial analyst. His father was a very intelligent person as well. He has his personality and quirks on Twitter, I know, but he does that for fun, really. Go check out the video that's pinned at the top of his Twitter page. When you get a chance, it's like 14 minutes long, but it's well worth the listen. He explains the yen and the Japanese reverse carry trade, what that means, how that works, and its impacts on oil and global economics, right? So his thesis and his whole fund that he has is built out that treasuries is where everybody's going to run to at the end of the day. He thinks that yields are going to spike in treasuries when they let the market collapse. I think that's going to be flopped. We'll see who's right. It probably happens both ways. It's just whipsaw, right? Which direction does it go first? My bet is that they pivot on rates to save the market, just because I think the administration that's currently in needs to look good, and that's what they're going to try to do versus saving the currency. And if it does go that way, then they can roll out stablecoin regulation and they can soak up all that foreign debt that gets dumped on the market. So that's going to have huge implications for global macroeconomics. The dollar is likely no longer going to be the reserve currency if and when that happens. And that moves things along very quickly. If you want to go watch my domino theory video on XRP and how things are laid out and what happens in what order to be able to get XRP to $50, $100, $1,000 a piece. I think it's a good thesis. We'll see if I'm right on it or not. I don't have a crystal ball more than anybody else does. I did get some kudos and some thumbs up from people that I think are intelligent and have respect for on that video and the thesis that I have. So that made me feel good. I don't know if it's going to come true or not. But now they're not encumbered. Like here in the U.S., even if they don't pass stablecoin regulation, XRP, full legal clarity that it's not a security. Ripple can still continue to sell XRP in institutional sales. I think they've revamped their ODL product here domestically in the U.S. over the last year, since last July, when the judge issued the original ruling that XRP was not a security with some language around ODL. Obviously, they've probably pushed the majority of that into international markets. Matt Rosenden, talked to him. He helped Ripple build ODL. That really wasn't the topic of our conversation, but very intelligent individual. So just based on the conversations I've had with him, I feel very confident that they're going to be able to probably continue that product into the future. We'll see what happens as other amendments get passed on the XRPO and the implications of that, right? That's what I'm excited about, though, because I want to be able to use my XRP and earn a yield and borrow against it and do all that fun stuff. And a lot of that stuff we've orchestrated through institutional partnerships for our clients at Digital Wealth Partners and Digital Ascension Group. So again, if that's something of interest to you, you can go check that out at digitalfamilyoffice.com, or sorry, digitalfamilyoffice.io. IO is the last part of that, or digitalwealthpartners.net. So anyway, rambling on here, but I'm super excited and pumped for today. I think this is another huge milestone for the adoption of this technology at scale globally for the financial infrastructure and SWIFT and the back end of the stock market and derivatives and all the other things that we know this is going to be used for in the long term, that's going to provide efficiencies and benefits for people and reduce frictions and costs. So anyway, without any further ado, we will hop into the questions here and run it down tonight. Anything's fair game. So estate planning, tax mitigation, questions around macroeconomics. I'm going to guess on time frames, right? Like I don't have a crystal ball. So if you want something like this is what it is, you're probably not going to get that here. I'm going to hit you with the lawyer answer, which is it depends. But I'm going to give you context to make your own decisions, which is what I would want, on the other side of this. So yeah, we'll go ahead and run it down, and I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Like I said, super excited to be here with y'all. First up, appreciate you on the super chat, Alfredo. He says, "Hola!" What's going on, man? I just notarized my LLC today. Heck yeah! Excited to move forward with the GOAT of all assets. Thank you for all you do. Absolutely, brother. I'm glad that you, and that's what I'm talking about. People being proactive, getting things set up before we really do see the fireworks that are coming. I get pumped. We get a lot of fulfillment from that, me and my team. I'm just super excited for people to be able to take advantage of this on the other side of price appreciation and be able to take care of their families and not have to dump a whole bunch of money into taxes or get themselves in a spot where they did pay the taxes and now they owe a bunch of money and there's fees and it gets racked up. And I don't say that to fearmonger. To be honest with you, I believe and I'm hopeful that Trump gets in here and the income tax goes away and the whole tax code gets revamped. I would love nothing more than to see that. But in the same breath, I have to live in the reality that we have today. And it's not like the estate planning or any of that stuff isn't necessary if taxes go away, because it still absolutely is. It protects you and silos risks. It limits your liability on things. It reduces exposure to creditors or people that are going to come after you with lawsuits. The insurance on your assets in institutional custody, the partnerships that we have to be able to allow you to borrow against them, which is not taxable. You don't have to sell them or lose exposure. You can put them to work and earn yield. And then again, if there still are taxes, whether that's capital gains or gift taxes or estate taxes, all the other parts of the tax code aside from income tax, we'll be able to mitigate those too. So anyway, appreciate the super chat. Rob, heck yeah, $5.89 on the super chat. I love the number. Appreciate you being here, brother. Let's see. Victor, he says, this is more of a mindset question. Okay, I love this. All right. It is my perception that you live in abundance. You would be correct, sir. Where were you always like that, or have you lived with scarcity mindset, and what helped you make the transition? This is a fantastic question, especially for the people that are watching this. And you can call it woo-woo or whatever you want to, but I can tell you that there is a definite correlation between exactly what he's discussing here and the people that I meet that are successful, or what I deem as successful, right? You can label things however you want. But yeah, I'm very optimistic. I tend to be upbeat, even in the face of problems, probably almost to a detriment in some cases. I keep people around me that are even slightly pessimistic and very realistic, because I need those people to kind of bring me back to reality sometimes, so that I can make good decisions, especially when it impacts other people. So to answer your question here, was I always that way? Absolutely not. I did not grow up I grew up in a well-to-do household. Really, if you could call it white privilege, I was as white privilege as you could get. I did not grow up in a situation where I really didn't have access to things. I mean, it's not like I grew up in, multi-million-dollar home or anything like that, but like white picket fence, and like my parents didn't get divorced until after I graduated, so I really can't complain. But at the same time, there were things that their paradigm instilled in me that I try not to do for my son. My wife occasionally will say things like we're poor, or that costs too much, or things like that. I don't say those things. If there's something that we can't afford, I ask, how can we afford it? What can we do? What value can we create to help other people to be able to earn the income that would be usable for that? I'm always looking for opportunities, always trying to provide solutions, again, almost to a detriment. Because some people don't want that. Sometimes they just want to vent and have you listen. I don't know if you guys have a spouse that's that way or not. Love my wife. Sometimes she doesn't want a solution. Sometimes she just wants me to sit and nod and agree. Learning on those things. But yeah, to transition, I have affirmations that I say on a regular basis every single night before I go to sleep, and I try to repeat them occasionally through the day, especially when I have negative thoughts about things. And they help, right? You can brainwash yourself either direction, and the things that you think about and what you focus on is what manifests in your life. I truly believe that. I've seen it happen both ways. I see people that focus on abundance and creating value and helping other people, and all those things come back to them tenfold. It's not always the way you think it's going to come back to you. I will say that for sure. And it's not always in the time frame that you would prefer that it comes back to you. But it will come back to you 10x whatever you put out to other people. I can guarantee that. Because I know from experience, like I said, I feel extremely blessed and grateful for all the stuff that has happened to me over the last 4 years, good and bad. And that's the other thing I would say is probably extreme responsibility, is the thing that I see people that live in abundance have, because you have control over the situation. If you're making excuses or saying it's because of economics or the politics or the work environment or your boss or your friend, or if you give anybody else the excuse, you're giving them the power, right? But if you put it on yourself, then you get to make those choices. And at the end of the day, you decided to be in whatever position you're in. You've made the decisions to get you where you are in your life. And if you take the accountability on that, then you can change it, right? You're not a victim. So, and I listen to Jim Rohn. I listen to a lot of mindset people when I am doing cardio or just driving. I read autobiographies by people that I have a lot of respect for. And so I'm constantly trying to fill my mind with things that are building me up. And I'm very aware of what I'm reading and what I'm doing and what I'm putting in my mind on a regular basis. That would be the other thing, right? Like, I think people doom scroll on TikTok and maybe end up in a place that they didn't intend to. And you're being fed things from the algorithm. And a lot of time, if you, people tend to gravitate toward like worst case scenario. That's how people are wired, right? You're always looking for the problems, so that you can, avoid them. And if that's what ends up being on your feed most of the time, that's what the algorithm continues to feed you. And if you're always looking at upbeat stuff, if you're looking for motivational content, if you're looking for other people that are creating value, the algorithm works the other way too. So I don't know if that answers your question. I would say if you wanted a time when I actually transitioned, I'll give you a tangible time in my life that I felt something click over for me on this topic. When I was 17 years old, I took a lot of advanced courses in high school. I was trying to get college credits and be what my parents wanted me to be, ahead of the game, right? And I remember taking a couple classes, and I just was having a hard time, right? And I didn't do well. and then I had to show them, and felt embarrassed or discouraged. Obviously, I could see that they were disappointed, which was rough, and that's when I kind of realized, like, does this even matter 5 years from now? So that's another mantra that I think through on a pretty regular basis nowadays. Is I look through that lens when I am stressed out or concerned or overwhelmed. I'm in the day to day, and I feel like I'm in the mud. I try to back up and look at it. Does this matter 5 years from now? And if nobody's dead and nobody's lost a limb, it's going to be fine, right? In the reality of it, if nobody's in jail, nobody lost a limb, nobody's dead, we're okay. And obviously you got to think about the long-term implications of whatever's going on. But I'm just saying, that really gives you a good framework for the abundance, and it allows you to pull your head out of the mud, or sulking, or feeling sorry for yourself if you are in a bad spot. So anyway, like I said, I don't know if that gives you exactly what you're asking for here, but hopefully that provided you some value. And I really do appreciate the question, because it does matter. And on the other side of price appreciation, I'll say this too. Ed Milet, if you guys haven't ever listened to Ed, I wouldn't buy his programs and stuff. He's a really good speaker. The people that I know that know him. Anyway, he talks about your financial thermostat. And if you believe you're poor, if you live in a scarcity mindset, if you're a miser and you're trying to hold on to everything all the time, and you're not putting things out so that it can come back to you, then you end up losing the majority of what you have. And you'll only ever operate at whatever frequency or level you're okay with operating at. So we talked about this in the mastermind, like maybe in last week, on the Saturday call. If you believe that being wealthy is evil, or you have to be a bad person to have a bunch of money, that was my dad. He was like, "Oh, those people must have had to do something horrible to get that much money." And I'm like, that's not true though, because I meet lots of people. They're wonderful, fantastic people that just want to help a bunch of people, and they figured out how to solve a problem for a lot of people, and they make a lot of money for doing so. Is that bad? Right? And the other people are happy to pay them the money because it solves a big problem for them. And they have a niche skill set that allows them to do something that nobody else does. So you get paid directly in proportion to the problem, how complicated and difficult the problem is that you solve, and how irreplaceable you are in that process. That completely determines how much you get paid to do something. Whether that's working for somebody else, or running your own business, or whatever it is. If you solve a problem that's almost nobody else can solve, and you're the only person that can do it, and it does impact somebody's life in a very meaningful way, really. So there's three things, like it's either health, their relationship, or financially. Like those are the three things that have the most meaning to most people. Then you can really make as much money as you want, right? And the other person that's on the other side of that transaction, as long as you're taking care of them and they feel like they're getting more value than they're paying you, then everybody wins, right? So, and I've tried to construct things in my mind where whoever I'm dealing with, they have to win for me to win. And as long as I operate in that manner, then I'm putting their interests at least on par or even above my own. Sometimes that'll bite you in the ass, right? Business is not always fair or friendly, but you want to operate and work with other people that have a similar mindset to yourself. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. I think a lot of people still believe that that's the case. In the markets, it is, right? In markets, somebody wins, somebody loses. But in real life, when you're working in business, I always ask the other person what they want out of the transaction. Like, if this went perfect for you, what does that look like? And that gives them the ability to go, okay, well, this guy wants me to be successful. He has my interest, right? And then they'll tell me, if this went perfect, you would introduce me to da da da, or I would make da da da, or we would work together in this way, or whatever it is. So that's another question I always try to ask when I'm having a conversation with somebody is, if this conversation went exactly the best way for you, what does that look like? And then you get that answer, right? And that's been another key thing for me in making sure that I'm able to work with people and they get a benefit, right? Because almost relationships are transactional at the end of the day, whether you want them to be or not. And most people that I work with are willing to forego short-term benefit for long-term relationship, right? I don't know if you've ever interacted with somebody at a sales transaction that they're like sleazy, like used car salesman. And I hate to use that term, but like it's really what it is, where you can tell they're like trying to get one over on you and get you to sign the dotted line today. I don't want any part of that. When I interned at Northwestern Mutual, when I was in college, they wanted me to do that to all my friends and family, and I hated it. I think I had one conversation, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I feel slimy. It's not into this. And so I just went on and eventually ended up working in sales. But your mom has become a member. That's awesome. Eventually ended up working in sales, and I sold B2B. I prefer B2B. That's another reason that we, make sure that we are setting up clients as LLCs or trusts. So there's a lot of benefits that go around with that. But in a B2B transaction, it's about building a relationship and a partnership with that other entity. Whereas I feel like if you sell to retail or sell at an individual level, it tends to be short-sighted, mostly for the other party besides the business. So anyway, I'm rambling on here. Victor's asked a fantastic question. I need to get to these other ones, so I'm going to go ahead and move on down the line here. But thanks again for asking this, and hopefully, again, provided you some value, or maybe you got to learn a little bit about me and my journey. This one's good. He says, Indie Odyssey says, should we get the party started? Maybe wait a day or two. Maybe wait till the weekend. Maybe, I think this month is going to be a really good month. I will say that. I don't know if it's today. Obviously, today was a good day. But, as the yacht party and the jets and all that stuff, maybe wait a few weeks. Living Legacy. Or I'm sorry, Atlantic Living. Good to see you. Did you notice a lengthy glitch on live stream last night? You may have thought you were live during that time. So many crypto organizations owe Ripple so much gratitude for their win. I'm news to me. I appreciate you bringing it to my attention, and we will try to get that rectified and figure out what's going on or why that happened. Do you have like time frames or timestamps that you can put in the chat? That'd be very helpful. You also asked, do you believe the SEC will boast about their $125 million fine as a victory? Hopefully the XRP documentary will highlight how investors were hurt by the lawsuit. I do. I do think that the SEC wanted some flesh with this. I think that they will boast that it was a victory for them. Ripple can pay it. They're in a very strong position on their balance sheet, and I'm not really concerned about that. But I do think that they will use it in that context. And were these unregistered securities offerings? Yes, they were. Did they give them the ability to fix that before? Not really, right? Like, there was no regulation when they got into this. And should they be grandfathered in? Should they have been awarded that much money? I mean, they originally asked for $2 billion, right? So what did Brad say? He said it's a 94% reduction off of what they asked for. The largest settlement or fine previous to this was $50 million. I don't remember who it was that paid that, but that was, the largest fine that was issued previous to this one. So yeah, but honestly, getting sued by the SEC is like a rite of passage in a lot of ways for most of these companies. especially if they're going to get rolled into the fabric of the U.S. in some capacity, right? So Amazon was sued by the SEC. You also had Tesla was sued by the SEC, and Elon has his feelings about the SEC at this point. But it's almost like I said, like a rite of passage. So for them to issue this fine and it finally to come down and there be a ruling, I'm just glad it's over, to be honest with you. I didn't expect it to be this high on the fine. Just to be transparent, I thought it was going to be closer to like the 50 million, which had been issued before. So to see 125 was a bit surprising. But yeah, Chris and Monica, they have done XRP Unleashed. Super excited to see that documentary come out. It should come out somewhere in September. They actually texted me earlier today. So, excited for that to come full circle and be out for people to see. I'm still kind of confident that we'll see some price appreciation on the asset before that actually airs live. Katie girl. She says Maddie G and her have questions. When do you think XRP will get listed as a tier 1 asset? So that's going to be a BIS question, right? Like Bank of International Settlements, that's who makes that designation. Now that we have clarity here in the US and it can be used, again, Brad came out today, and you guys are in the mastermind, so you can see this in Carbon 1. I posted his email that he sent us. He said that, over the next 60 days, the SEC could appeal. So I don't know if banks and institutions are going to kind of hold off until that period's over here in the U.S. I still think that they're maybe a little concerned there before they move forward, right? Like kind of a question mark, like, does this get overturned or appealed? And so until then, I don't know that they're going to rush in and use it unless they absolutely need to, which is kind of the scenario that I think plays out. And that's when I think it could get listed as a tier 1 asset. Once it's involved in the global infrastructure for payments at scale, for settlement in the back end of the stock market and FX and commodities and international settlements for Nostro Vostro, I think it'll be a high enough price and stable enough and have enough volume consistently over the network that it could then be designated a tier 1 asset. So, that's a lot of qualifications that I just ran down there. But that's my thesis. So I think all of those will happen in the next 6 months, right? By the beginning quarter of 2025 or in the first quarter of 2025, I think is a realistic time frame now that we've had this, black cloud lifted off of Ripple and XRP here in the US. And we are on the precipice of like some huge macroeconomic events that are, culminating. So next 6 months, my guess. Katie Girl also says, does mass institutional adoption have to wait until XRP becomes a tier 1 asset? I would say it's kind of the other way around. And it's a double-edged sword there, right? Like you need, I guess chicken and egg is a better description. Do we need actual implementation and utility of the asset to make it riskless, or do they give it a riskless designation and then it's used in those applications? I tend to believe the first scenario, like it starts being used, and then because of its use, it's then given that designation. But could happen the other way too. She also says, Mikkel mentioned Yellen meeting with someone who I think was from Japan. They were, the BOJ, Bank of Japan. Do you think they're trying to slow down the crash? If so, you think they're trying to make it crash after Trump is in office? Like I said, I feel like Japan is going to save their currency and the U.S. is going to save the markets, in my opinion. Maybe they both save the currency, and then Michael Gate is right and treasuries win. Okay, but that's going to be at the expense of the markets if they do. Japan is going to save their currency. They're going to have to, and that's going to be bad in the short term for their markets. Bullish in the long term on the Nikkei. I think that it has huge upside from here after they get all this worked out. Super bullish on their economy and, like I said, long term. probably at least the next 5 years in Japan and their companies and the Nikkei, super bullish. Here domestically in the U.S., we're in for a roller coaster ride, right? So if it whipsaws, which we've already kind of seen some of that, the markets were down and now they're back up. I was watching a video earlier today where a dog was like laying against the couch and was like, "I'm dead. I'm alive. I'm dead." Like that's kind of how I feel. The markets are going to be here in the short term, very volatile. The VIX is already way up. Again, if the Fed pivots and I'm right and they save markets and they don't save treasuries and they roll out stablecoin regulation in order to do that, then we're in for some significant upside in our markets. If they pivot, though, it decimates the reverse carry trade over there in Japan. It squeezes that margin even tighter, and you're going to see people. The treasury market will collapse on itself, and they're going to have to roll out something that causes significant demand here domestically in the U.S. to soak up all those treasuries that are going to flood the market. So that's my anticipation. Again, part of my domino theory. We'll see if I'm right or if I'm wrong, but my guess is that's exactly what they were talking about. Jessica, awesome. She says, love the show, long-time listener. Very cool. First-time caller. This is good. Can we get a comparison between Archax versus Anchorage? This is a good question. Appreciate you bringing it up. So, like I said, we finalized the KYC and the onboarding for our accounts with both of those custodians for Digital Wealth Partners. And I just want to make this delineation for people that may be confused, because I had somebody email me earlier today after we sent out some emails. They were under the impression that they had signed up with Digital Ascension Group and, they were going to have full control of their assets. We have to have multi-sig on all these accounts. These are our accounts at the custodians that we share and partner with our clients on. You still have full signing capacity on these. You own the assets. We don't own the assets. The custodian doesn't own the assets. You make the choices. We provide you with a bunch of choices, and through the partnerships and institutional partnerships that we have to be able to earn yield or borrow against it or all the other things that you might want to do. We're a service provider and we do wealth management, right? So however much you want us to be involved one way or another, happy to be that way. Digital Wealth Partners does have the custody account at both of these custodians. We did have it originally with Digital Ascension Group. Digital Ascension Group was not a registered RIA, okay? It just provided custody, institutional custody. In order to be able to provide our clients with a full scope of wealth management services and all the wonderful stuff that we've orchestrated, it has to be done under the RIA. So it's SEC registered, full compliance. It's just been a beating, but it's in place, and we have a new CCO, which is a chief compliance officer. She's brilliant. Worked with a lot of other large corporations before coming over to us. We have one of the best consulting firms for compliance as well to make sure that we are operating above board as far as we can. But anyway, just wanted to make that clarification for people. These accounts are with Digital Wealth Partners. It is an RIA. It's a wealth management service, and we partner with our clients to be able to manage their assets and provide services and the things that they would like to do. And that comes along with, the insurance on the accounts. It comes along with the capability to borrow against your assets at a reasonable rate. It comes along with ways to earn yield on your assets. And then we also have partnerships for a ton of other alternative investment opportunities, as well as investments in markets, bonds, annuities, insurance, all the other full scope of stuff, right? And everybody's different. Everybody's, got their preferences and their long-term goals. And we work with people individually to make sure that their stuff's taken care of the way that it should be. But again, at the end of the day, if you don't sign, stuff doesn't happen. Your assets sit in the account, right? So we can give you all this stuff, but if you don't want to move forward, they're your assets. You make the decisions and calls. So anyway, so Archax and Anchorage. We'll start with Anchorage. So Anchorage is much further along in their wealth management accounts than any other institutional custody provider. They have a partnership with OnRamp, who is our TAMP, or a turnkey asset management platform. Eric, I can't think of Eric's last name. He's the CEO there. We've met with him. Great guy, very intelligent. He put this together because it didn't exist, right? Solve your own problems, and then solve it for other people too. So we have that portal. You log into there, you'll be able to see the full scope of your assets. We do have to get them integrated with Archax. They don't currently have an API integration to be able to pull that data or bill on the assets at Archax. So stuff we're working through. Again, when you're a leader in a space, it's not always built out for you. So Anchorage is much further along. They have all of the partnerships that we're going to use to be able to do a lot of things I just discussed, already integrated with them. The billing, the reporting, our fund is going to be run through Anchorage. They're here domestic in the U.S. They are compliant. They are a registered bank and under the purview of, I believe it's the OCC. I could be wrong on that, so check me. But they do have a regulator here in the U.S. We're under FINRA and the SEC is who has purview over the RIA. And that's who our registrations are through. So anyway, the scope of assets that Anchorage provides custody for and benefits for are limited to Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Chainlink, Matic, Avalanche, Solana, and Quant. I think they have Quant, and then a ton of other ERC20 tokens. A lot of DeFi stuff that's been built out, Aave, Compound, those types of things, Yield Farm. Not really any of the stuff that we're overly interested in. XRP, obviously, we can hold there, and that's a benefit. Archax has so switching gears from Anchorage to Archax. Archax is in the UK, and they provide a much larger scope of assets that we can custody and hold and work with our clients on. So that includes XRP, XLM, HBAR, Algorand, and then they also have Medico or Ripple as their custody solution provider for the software that they use. And so my expectation is that, the XRP that's held there probably may have ways to be able to generate revenue in correlation with the XRPL sooner than Anchorage. But currently, no institutional custodian has anything close to what like X-Man has, or Zum, as far as interoperability with the XRPL for trust lines and delegating assets and doing all those things. Those are things that we're working with them on, especially for our clients. Those are things that our clients want. Flare and Songbird, again, probably a little ways out, but they do have Fireblocks at Archax as an ancillary software that they use for custody. And so with that, we should be able to add, XDC, Flare, and other assets that people do hold a significant portion of to be able to then work with institutional partners to figure out a way to earn yield and provide benefits on those things as well. If you're international, it's a bit easier to hold your assets at Archax. And again, they have the wider breadth of stuff, and I think that they're going to be a little bit further along when it comes to the XRPL stuff versus Anchorage. So we're also the only wealth advisor here in the U.S. that provides institutional custody with multiple custodians. Nobody else does that. Most everybody's just at Anchorage. If they do provide the services that we do, we're one of maybe 7 to 10 people globally that do what we're doing. And really, most of those people have a few clients that maybe held digital assets that wanted an institutional custody. They really don't have huge, meaningful allocations. The amount of capital that people are working with us on is significant in comparison to the other people in the space. The only other family office doing what we're doing is called Bespoke, and they work with people that are primarily Bitcoin and ETH early investors, and they're great at it. Matt McClintock and his team over there are specialized in that. So if you got 500 million in Bitcoin or ETH, happy to make an intro. We're more focused on utility-driven assets. We do have clients that hold significant allocations to Bitcoin and Ethereum because they are blue chip, right? And we do provide ways to be able to borrow against those and earn yield on them. That's pretty meaningful for those clients. Had a call today with a gentleman that's looking to do that as well. And a guy flew in last week, had a conversation with him around that. So anyway, those are the main differences between two separate custodians, and kind of where we're at with both of them. So Archax, again, probably going to take just a little bit longer to get everything situated and integrated, just because we are their first wealth management client. So Jesse also says, I signed up this week and need to decide. Mikkel's great. Great addition to the team. Yeah, Mikkel's fantastic. He's working his tail off this week, by the way. So kudos to him. For anybody that talks to him, just know, like, I could not ask for a better teammate, here at Digital Wealth Partners. Our whole team, man. Like last night, people are sending emails at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night trying to get stuff done. And I am blown away at just the work ethic of everybody that's on board, and their ability to see the long-term vision and what it's going to take to get there. You can't buy that. Like, I just feel, again, so blessed and grateful to have people around me that are willing to work and work as hard and run alongside me to get things done. So Mikkel's definitely one of those people, and I'm glad he was able to have a conversation with you. So the other thing I didn't mention on Anchorage that I will bring up here, and this isn't now, but maybe mid-September is kind of my expectation for this. We should be able to migrate IRAs from iTrust Capital or Bitcoin IRA or Forge or Quest or wherever you have it over into that infrastructure as qualified accounts. It's obviously good. It'll have to be a segregated account under your profile, but it does get you the insurance. It gives you full visibility of that, gives you access to be able to trade it and do things you need to real time, not at 4 p.m. when somebody walks into a level 4 facility and like sees your keys while they make a transaction on a ledger, because that's what happens at Digital Trust, which is what Bitcoin IRA and iTrust Capital use. And we should be able to generate yield on those assets before the end of the year in qualified accounts. You're encumbered in your ability to borrow against those. If those are in a Roth, it might be a good idea, or if they're just in a traditional IRA, it might be a good idea to move it into a backdoor Roth, pay some taxes right now and get those over there, especially if you're closer to 59.5. If you're not close to 59.5, having your stuff in an IRA, I'm not going to say isn't a good idea, but you just want to be aware of how encumbered you are to be able to actually use the assets in a way that's meaningful for you. So good to have a portion in and a good portion out. That is coming soon. So just wanted to mention that on Anchorage. InLab92 says, big fan. Thanks for all you do. Absolutely. I enjoy these and happy to be here for them. I've been toying with the idea to convert some BTC and ETH for XRP. If you had to do it, would you sell first, pay taxes on the gains, and then buy XRP, or just convert it? You just want to make one transaction. If you were going to swap, because both transactions are going to be taxable. So I would rather just do one than have two tax implications, especially if it's out of a stable coin. So, yeah, and up to you if you're swapping BTC for ETH. The charts look like they're about to break down in XRP's favor. So, if there was going to be a time to do it, I can't give you financial advice, but it seems like a great time looking at the chart and the TA to make those swaps and convert. I do see some pretty significant appreciation for XRP against BTC and ETH. I have thoughts on, where it's going to go personally, just because of broader macroeconomic events and the implementation of the asset. But just historically through the cycles, it also looks like, a significant move's about to happen on both of those charts. So XRP priced in BTC and XRP priced in ETH. But yeah, I would just do the one transaction and swap whatever you wanted for the XRP. And if you have access to an OTC desk, I would do it that way. So happy to make an introduction to Uphold or Kraken, or Archax, or Anchorage. Any of those would provide you with like 20 basis points on the trade instead of multiple percentages to swap. So I'd just keep that in mind. And you can set up like a Kraken Pro account, or even Coinbase Prime, I think, will do the lower bips on trades versus just putting it on an exchange. Obviously, it's got to be like 6 figures, but if you're swapping Bitcoin and ETH for XRP, it's probably 6 figures would be my guess. So that's why I'm making the comment. David J says, congrats to all XRP holders. Absolutely, brother. Appreciate you being here. Excited for the case ruling also. We talked about this. So Vadim's asked, is it possible for and or likely for the SEC to appeal? Brad put out in his email to shareholders that could happen in the next 60 days here. I don't know why just in the next 60 days and not further along than that. Maybe there's some stipulation in the way that the judge ruled or laws that I'm not aware of. Again, I know a lot about a few things. Law is not one of those. I defer to James Flannan and a few of the other lawyers on X for their expertise. But I don't think it's likely. I mean, they got $125 million. Like, what do you need to appeal for? You know what I mean? Like, that's enough. If the fine had been lower, I think maybe there was a higher chance that they would have appealed. But I think it'll be a one and done. Let's see here. Chadwick, thanks again for the memberships, brother. That's good for other people here on the channel. Man, he gifted a ton of them. Thank you. People are pumped. I'm excited here in the chat. Here we go. ISO Lab with the $2 super chat. That's awesome, man. Jacob, he says Ripple 589 yet. I don't know. I think XRP probably passes that number eventually, but I really do think that Ripple set themselves up in a way that they could be publicly listed at that price. I would just love to see a public listing at $589. Like a 20x return for most people for where they bought it. Honest Aim, thank you for the super chat, brother. He says, appreciate all you do for us in the mastermind. Looking past the big case win, is the McHenry sponsored FIT 21 bill House passed in May the next big legislation hurdle, or do we need stablecoin bill? I think they're going to push FIT 21 into 2025, and they're going to build a big moat around XRP and XLM this year with the stablecoin bill. I think it's going to take the next administration to pass FIT 21. I think stablecoin regs are going to be rushed through in order to save treasuries. I could be wrong on that, but that's my speculation. And thank you. You always have really good questions. Manny says, nearly 4 years later, an appeal would be politically unwise in an election year with a large number of single issue voters. Thank you to Judge Torres and John Deaton. Yes, I agree. I appreciate them. And I agree with you. I don't think an appeal would be in their best interest. Kevin, he says, Brasky, XRP is still cheap. Yeah, I mean, for how long, I don't know. But now that things are kind of out of the way here in the U.S., again, I think there's a way that maybe stablecoin regs don't get passed, and XRP is the only choice for saving the stock market or whatever else they need to do. So, until it's actually used at scale, it's going to continue to be cheap. And I don't like that any more than anybody else does, but just gives you some more time to accumulate. That's all I'm saying. J Tank says 3 digits end of year. Yeah, I could see that. Especially again if we got utility of things. Kevin's asked, do you think you'll get an XRP tattoo? I haven't got a tattoo in a long time. I need to go get the tattoo that I have on my back redone, to be honest with you. But yeah, you know what? It's going to be a pretty significant moment in my life. And if you're going to get a tattoo for a reason, like Brad got an XRP tattoo, right? When they got clarity on XRP on 7/13/2023. That's a huge milestone in his life, and it has real implications on the rest of his life. And to remember that and have, a piece or something to look at for that, I think is super cool. Because anything that you have that's like a tangible item, so let's say you go out and buy a Rari, or you buy a watch, or you buy something that is for that occasion, which a lot of people that I'm in my network do, right? Like, you need to treat yourself also. Like, when you have successes, you're not in Little League anymore. Like, you don't get a trophy or a little ribbon. Like, go buy yourself something cool so you can remember it. Mr. Wonderful does that with watches, right? So when he has a great exit or something cool happen in his life and he wants to remember that moment, he'll go out and buy a watch associated with it. He has a lot of watches at this point, obviously, because he's a huge collector. But yeah, I think there's a possibility on the tattoo, Kev. If you'll go with me, we'll get one. We'll go up north. I'll come see you and get some barbecue, and we'll get tats. Let's see here. This is running it down this evening. It says, do you feel like the V-neck exposes your pecs better than a standard? Absolutely. Yeah, I think it takes a particular person to be able to pull off a V-neck. It's not a deep V, though. Like, I have some that are like a deep V. Yeah, that would be more for the pectorals versus just this one. Lazy River has reminded me. I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, and anybody that enjoys this, I do these Mondays and Wednesday nights. If you get some value from it, please check those thumbs up there and share and subscribe and all the other stuff that helps the algorithm here on YouTube and the other channels that this is broadcasted to. Yeah, this is a good question. Infinitely Curious says, hi, Jake, can you explain what you cover within the first 30-minute consult? Thanks in advance. So he has 5 questions, and then we run down. We help you walk through what you need to do to be proactive is mostly the conversation. So those 5 questions and sometimes we get this data beforehand. Well, are you married? Do you have kids? The other part of this question is, do you still like your children? Most of the time it's yes, but occasionally there's a no there. And so that's important. What's your bag look like, right? Because we can't really help you decide trust LLC or what else you might want to do in the short term if we don't have, and I just always ask for ballpark. You don't have to give me specifics, just ballpark me. And if I know if you're married and I know if you got kids, then that gives me the context I need. And same thing with the rest of our team. Ask those questions. And then long-term goals, where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? How do you want to use the assets? Are you going to take profit in this cycle? What's that going to look like for you? Right. And so once we have that context, and then sometimes the last one's spelled out in that other part. And sometimes, it's an afterthought. Do you have any philanthropic interest? What do you want to do for charity? Do you have any charitable organizations that you want to donate to, or do you want to set one up? What does that look like? So after we run all those things down, and then we'll, kind of walk you through, based on the assets that you have, here's your options. maybe you don't need anything. There's been a few calls. Well, I say a few, probably maybe 10% of the calls I've ever taken where I was like, I don't really have anything to sell you. Like, if I were you, I would just continue to buy more XRP or whatever asset you're accumulating. I hate selling people anything that they don't really need or it's not going to benefit them. So if it's then, like $50,000 to $80,000 invested in digital assets, you probably really don't need to do an entity or set anything. You can do it after, right? Because you're still going to be under the gift tax threshold in most circumstances. So if that's the case, then don't worry about it. Like just keep buying over there and just keep stacking and make more money. Not worry about it. You set it up on the backside to mitigate taxes. If you got, more than $80,000 invested, especially if you plan to take profit, probably a really good idea to set up an LLC and move your assets in there and get your bank account set up and do all the stuff that you need to be proactive. You can get your stuff in institutional custody, right? Which puts you one step closer to being able to earn yield and borrow against it and do all the other stuff that we want to do with the asset. And then if you got north of like, I don't know, $300,000 or $250,000 invested, especially if it's in specific assets, you might start looking at a trust, right? Because if the assets are in there before price appreciation, then you don't have to worry about gifting them later on, and they can grow inside there. And you don't have to worry about the gift tax threshold here in the U.S., which between you and your spouse, you get 27.2 million is what you get for your lifetime gift tax threshold. So if you think you're going to be north of that with the appreciation on your assets, you might start looking at a trust, but then you got to weigh that too, because it's closer to 20 grand to get everything set up for that. And you're like, well, if I put the 20 grand in digital assets, like that could be a lot of money later on, right? So even then you gotta kind of have to weigh it and say, okay, I plan to take this much profit, or this is how far over the gift tax threshold I'm going to be. So at what point does it really make sense to go ahead and spend that money and get things going now? Does it not? And we walk you through all those things. We kind of give you pros and cons of what's going to be best for you in your situation, right? Once we have context around stuff. So that's really what we run down in a 30-minute consult. Like I said, it's on all ends of the spectrum, and give you a good, better, best type situation too. I hate hard selling people on stuff. I just want people to be educated and have the data to make their own decisions is really what it comes down to. Because most people don't have the context, right? They're like, why would I do that? Well, because this, and this that you're not thinking about or you didn't see because you don't know what you don't know. And you're like, oh, okay. Had I known that, I probably would have done this sooner, right? So anyway, this is a really good question. I don't think I've ever had anybody ask me this question this way. And so hopefully that's helpful for people. If you do want an initial consult, if you feel like that would be helpful for you, especially if you are north like of the 50 or 80,000 in digital assets and you want to run that down and figure out which of these scenarios is going to be best, you can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and book a call, or you can go to digitalwealthpartners.net, both of which take you to the same spot. So Harris won because Fahim Harris, I probably butchered that. Appreciate all you do. Do you think your domino theory will still happen to the T if the Fed cut, increase, or keeps the interest rates the same? Is it like a checkmate scenario? Yes, that's exactly what it's like. It's like a checkmate scenario. It doesn't matter what they do. If they hold rates where they're at, they could probably push it out a little bit longer. If they cut, everything snowballs. It's a flywheel if they cut rates right now. And again, I think that's what the administration is going to push them to do because they want the stocks to look good. And so they're going to be willing to sacrifice the treasuries and roll out stablecoin regulation. And I think they know that. I think that's their ace in the hole is the stablecoin regs to be able to stand up the treasury market and stabilize that. So that's what I would do. To the moon, cut rates, and then roll that out. So yes, I do believe that my theory will hold up. It's my thesis. I have a bias on that, obviously. But we'll see. If I'm wrong, I always say I'm wrong, right? Like when I started the stream tonight, I said, hey, I thought XRP would appreciate before the case ended. I was wrong. The case is done. XRP is still 60 cents. That was my speculation. I was off on that one. So if I'm wrong, I will definitely let people know. Hey, what's going on, Dave? Digital Outlook's on here. It's nice to see you, brother. Hope you and the wife are doing well. He says, whoop, whoop, boom. Yeah. Good deal. I'm excited for the lawsuit to be over and the gray cloud to be off of Ripple and their ability to move forward here in the U.S. with their products and services. But just for Digital Dave, Digital Outlook, we'll bring out the chain. Kevin is actually the person that gave me this. So kudos to Kevin. If you guys haven't ever seen the spinner chain for XRP, hopefully you have an XRP necklace. I don't know if you do or don't. There's a lot of people I know that do. You should have something if you're in it. General Flynn says the chatter he's hearing is BRICS collapsing, the dollar this October. Thoughts? I think they're going to do it before then, crypto future. If Japan capitulates and starts dumping treasuries because that trade, that reverse carry trade starts collapsing and people panic, it's going to be Project Sandman. The rest of the BRICS nations are going to dump with Japan. And like I said, that the only way that they stabilize that is they roll out stablecoin regulation here in the U.S. So I anticipate that happening before October, but I could be wrong. It could definitely take that long, especially if they don't pivot on rates. So, but they're supposed to pivot in September. So I just really don't see it taking until October. Let's see here. KB says, can you borrow against the assets and delegate it to a liquidity pool at the same time? I would love for that to be the case. I don't know. Until we have those amendments passed on the XRPL and we have pseudo accounts 64, 65, and 66, I don't know. I want that to be the way it works because then it's like a HELOC, right? On a home that's already rented out. I would love it if the assets themselves could pay the note off and me have a line of credit against it at the same time. Makes sense to me. I think it's better for the borrower and the lender. But we'll see, what the SEC says and how all that works on the other side of this deal. That's the other piece. Like, we're going to be on the forefront of that. We're going to be beating on the door. Luckily, we do have comms with the SEC and Hester and her team over there. So we should be able to, cross that bridge very quickly once the time comes. But until we have the capability to delegate and we have the capability to borrow and lend and do all the other stuff native to the XRPL, I wish I had an answer, but that's exactly how I want it to work. And I'll fight for that opportunity, to be honest with you. Budman says, hi all, just joined. What happened? You missed it, dude. It was a good time. Just kidding. Ran down, just basically me just rambling on and people being wonderful enough to sit and listen to me and go back and forth and ask great questions. Very cool. We got an Aussie. Mark Hayes says, hi from Australia. Huge thanks for all the content and insights. Absolutely. Also the community. Glad to have you with us. When utility occurs, what's your estimate for transactions per ledger and the value size of those? Thanks. So I guess you mean like size of transaction over the network. Depends on what you mean specifically over the network or the ledger. Is it the main net? Are there subnets associated with that? A lot of questions around the actual functionality and that piece. But just to give you a gist of maybe average size of a transaction over the network, I think it's going to be 7 figures. Swift moves $5 trillion per day. That's their daily volume. The FX market that SBI is a part of does around 6 trillion a day in volume. I think the DTCC runs something similar, 6, 7, 9 trillion on a big day in volume. So, if there's only 1,500 transactions on the mainnet and that's all it's scalable to do, I mean, you're looking at really large transactions. It's 1,500 per second, right? So it's still a lot of transactions per day. So if you really broke it down, I mean, yeah, maybe 1 million, maybe 6 figures. It's kind of my expectation for average transaction size. Higher end of 6 figures. I mean, you can do the math on that. If you want to put it in the chat over here, let's just take 15,000 times however many seconds are in a day. And this is the other piece of this. So transactions will move 24/7, 365 instead of just during business hours. And so then you've got things are open, 9 to 5. You've got 9 hours out of 24 hours that things are open. That's really limited in scope, right? So now if you could spread all those transactions over a 24-hour window, the transactions per second or the TPS could be less. And it could still facilitate the total amount of volume over a 24-hour period. So, I mean, that's not instant settlement. It's kind of T+1. But if you had to do it that way, if we have a subnet that's implicit or explicit to the XRPL that allows it to scale, then we're good to go, right? But I haven't seen that developed yet. So that's kind of my guesstimate. Six figures, mid to high 6 figures on the average transaction size to get it to the price that we want it to be. Very cool. He says he's based in Dubai. There's no capital gains or income tax. How are people in Dubai managing crypto worth millions? I'm thinking of ahead of what I've needed to do post price appreciation. So there are some custodians there in Dubai, Koma Inu and Hex Trust are both registered institutional custodians there in Dubai. I would seek them out. If you do have a wealth manager or somebody else there that you can partner with. We went and talked to the VARA there in Dubai back in February and the DIFC about potentially, being able to work in that jurisdiction with what we were building. We want to get everything situated here in the U.S., and it's definitely something on the roadmap to be able to set up a shop there in Dubai to be able to work with people. We do have other partnerships globally. Our partners at Saks Global, and we have a couple other firms that can set up stuff there in Dubai. There's a gentleman, Hamish, that I actually need to get back to. So thank you for reminding me on that. His stuff's been in my inbox for a couple weeks, and I feel bad now that I'm thinking about it. He was asking me for some specific information on a family we work with there. So it's kind of sticky, don't want to disclose exactly how things are coordinated, but I also don't want to leave him hanging. So anyway, definitely set things up in an estate, get them managed by an entity. You still have, what's the value added tax there of that? 6% on goods that are purchased. I really do like the tax regime there in Dubai, especially for people from the UK or Australia or anything that's under the crown. If they can move to Dubai, they're going to be much better off on the tax implications and what they have to deal with. So I would just look at institutional custody, the people there that can provide that for you, and get set up, because then you should be able to get some of the benefits that we provide. So you got the insurance on your assets, the multi-sig, more secure than just holding on a cold wallet. You should be able to work with fiduciaries there and use it as collateral for loans or other things. And I speculate Dubai is going to be pretty big for XRP and XLM too. So again, just after my call today, I have a feeling. But appreciate you bringing that up, and look forward to. I don't know if we'll work with you or not, but that's my suggestion for you if you do have assets that are worth a lot there in Dubai. Roger, my man, thank you for the super chat, brother. He says, just want to say thanks for all you do. I watch all your live streams. You have created so much trust in me and this space. Met Mikkel in Florida, and he's incredible, ready for custody. Awesome, brother. Yeah, that's super cool. Very humbling. Thank you for the kind words. That's the stuff that makes it worth it. You know, there's some days that are rough. And just to know that there's people out there that actually like we've had an impact on, it's pretty cool. So, and we're excited to work with you, and be able to set you up, you and your family, and reach your goals, whatever those are. Make sure that we do our part to help manage that and execute on whatever your vision is. So, appreciate you in the comment, and we look forward to working with you. Because Andrea says, whining, just kidding, winning. Hope you're doing well, ma'am. Utility Maximus. I have a decent wallet and I need to assign ownership of the assets in the wallet to my LLC. Where do I find the wallet address for my wallet so I can have the form notarized? You should be able to pull up like that long string of characters when you click into a wallet, you know, for whatever asset it is. It should give you a wallet address there on your descent that you can then, you know, write down or type into your form. And that would be the wallet address, that long string of characters, that's numbers and letters, lowercase and capitals, that would identify the actual wallet address on the device. And if you're having a hard time with that, I will say people in the mastermind group, fantastic. You can ask any question in there on those types of topics, and people, you know, flock to be able to help you. So, yeah, appreciate the question, and hopefully that answers it for you. Oh, this is good. C is asked, what's the difference between a Wyoming and Florida company? Attorney-client privilege. Please elaborate. And will that be coming to Florida anytime soon? Unlikely. I wish it would. So there's three reasons for Wyoming over Florida. Two of which probably, so I'll start with the last one. It's the best jurisdiction for digital assets and to be able to operate with a business. Wyoming has the best laws currently for digital assets in any U.S. state. Florida and Texas are progressive, but they still haven't rolled everything out in a way that's as beneficial as Wyoming. And so that's why, you know, we prefer Wyoming over any other jurisdiction here in the U.S., especially for a domestic asset protection trust or an LLC. And then you pointed out, you know, attorney-client privilege. So, you know, when we file stuff for you or attorneys file stuff for you, their names are listed on that documentation and publicly. And so you don't have to worry about that. It makes it more difficult for people to figure out who's associated with an entity. We still have to file the BOIR. We still have to, you know, let FINRA know, or somebody who's FinCEN know who's associated, the ultimate beneficial owner. But that's not public information. It's just for them. And that's to prevent money laundering and, you know, all the other stuff, right? Shell companies and a lot of what's gone on for a long time. So, if you set up a trust, the trust can be listed on the BOIR. But yeah, so that's the deal. Public perception is going to be difficult to figure out who's associated with the entity because of attorney-client privilege. And then the last thing in Wyoming is there's no state tax, but you don't have any state tax in Florida either. So that one's kind of a moot point in comparison to the other two. But hopefully, you know, that kind of explains to you why we prefer Wyoming over Florida. Not that Florida's bad, but you do not get attorney-client privilege. I don't see that that's going to come to that state anytime soon. And the digital asset regulation in Wyoming is better suited for operations there versus Florida as well. Mr. Pink, most important question. Will the SEC appeal within the 60 days or press release bragging about $25 million, $125 million. They're absolutely going to brag about the $125 million fine. Like, they're no doubt in my mind, Gary's going to try to like pin that up on his wall and make it seem like he's a hero. I don't believe they're going to appeal within the next 60 days. It's not something that I see happening. But again, I don't have a crystal ball. I think that the banks and other institutions may wait that period out, just to make sure, though. Chadwick says, I've got 95% of my pilot's license. You can trust me. I don't know on the pilot's license, man. Yeah. I want you to have 100% of your pilot's license if you're going to fly the plane for me. Same thing for a doctor. Let's see here. Scroll on down. Been on for an hour and a half, so get down here to the nitty gritty and probably wrap it up here soon. Halon's Razor, very cool. Thank you for the super chat. It would be awesome for the mastermind group to have a list of your affirmations posted there. Yeah, I can do that. I mean, they're kind of specific to me, right? Yeah, I'll share them in there. I think that those could be valuable for people. Again, so you want like SMART goals on stuff. Thank you again for the super chat, brother. And I will definitely post affirmations that I feel will be applicable for people, or maybe like blanks for stuff. I mean, I've talked about my vision for my life, and so I say that those things have already been accomplished, and I try to step into the person that I am on the other side of that, and what that's going to feel like in that moment when I'm saying those things to myself in a way that sounds like I've already accomplished them. That does a lot, right? Because then I can kind of see where I'm deficient, who I need to be, what skills, traits, beliefs that I need to have in order to reach those things. And then I kind of work backward from there. And it also allows me to feel in the moment what that will feel like, right? And I'm big on manifesting things. I think that absolutely exists. I think that your mind is a lot more powerful than people give it credit for. And there's been, and the reason I say that is I've just had it happen. So some tangible examples of that. I wanted to fly on a private jet 4 years ago. And I've only flown on one, just transparently with other people. But that happened within 6 months of me like deciding that I wanted to do that and thinking about it on a regular basis. And then I put myself in a position where I got the offer and I took it to be able to do that within probably even less than that. It's really probably like 3 months. When I was younger, and this, I probably only thought about this maybe 3 or 4 times. I was working that sales job for a Fortune 500 company, scaling locations, and I was like, man, I'd like to make more money. They wouldn't give me a company truck to drive around. I was like, I want a company truck. I want somebody to give me a company truck to drive. I want a credit card that I can charge stuff on, to be able to take clients, food and like, take care of them the way that I would like to. And I want to make more money, and within, like I said, I probably thought that 3 or 4 times. And within 6 months, I had a job offer. And the other party that came to me with that, they said, well, what do you want? What do you need to leave? And I gave them those demands, and they were like, absolutely. I'm like, dang, I should ask for more money, or, like maybe I cut myself short. But anyway, I think your thoughts are extremely powerful, and especially if you, and I would go experience things too. So if you want a car, if you want a house, if you want something physical, right? If you want a vacation, like tear a page out, look at it, put it as the background on your phone. Like those things are subliminal, and it's messaging in your mind, and it makes you look for those opportunities where you otherwise wouldn't have. And that's been a big change in my life. Is the opportunities have always been there. It's not like they just showed up. And it takes some preparation, right? Like you still have to put in the work and be able to put yourself in a position to be able to get those opportunities. But if you're not looking for those and working toward it and thinking about those things on a regular basis, you get what you focus on. I said that earlier, right? So anyway, yeah, I'm happy to post in the mastermind, what my affirmations are, and then maybe a way that other people can kind of riff off of those and do some of that for themselves, because I do think that that's important, and it has definitely worked for me. Scroll on up here. Chris 88. I like the 88, man. Tomorrow is 88. Back to the future. He says, new investor coming into the space, and that only has $100K or $100 week to spare income. Do you think XDC or XRP would be a better investment, in your opinion, for ROI, not financial advice? I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you how I'm positioned, and you make your own choices. Okay. I don't own any XDC. Everything I have everything in XRP. Is that silly? Probably. But I would say, to defend that, I've had enough conversations and been in enough situations and have enough context to feel extremely confident in that positioning. So up to you on what you want to do or how you want to position yourself. I'm not here to sway you one way or another. But I will say that I do not currently own any XDC. It is something that I would invest in the future, post price appreciation for XRP. But at the current time, I put as much as I can into XRP. So just my 2 cents. And again, like you said, not financial advice. If you want to talk to Mikkel, he can give you financial advice, and he will tell you which one to buy. DL says, does DAG extend to Australia? Thanks for the great content. We do. Yeah, we have partners there in Australia, and we can manage capital and provide a lot of the other services that we have for Australians through the custodians, especially Archax. So if that's something you're interested in, you can just email me at info@digitalfamilyoffice.io, and I'm happy to get you connected with John Basilos and his firm over there to be able to get you set up for, if you wanted to set up a family trust to move your assets into, pay the taxes on, get everything situated, or if you wanted to move your stuff offshore to Singapore or Dubai, we have those resources as well. Viber Finance is 500 million in ETH. I got that in a few wallets. Yeah, I mean, do it big. That you'd be surprised. People have it, man. It's crazy. So I went to an NFT conference. It was on the jet. It was on the jet 3 years ago, and there were 5 billionaires in the room. All of them made it. Well, I say that Dan Fleisman was he's the youngest CEO to ever take a company public at 19 years old. He puts on events called Elevator Nights, and they're free to attend. You can go check them out. I would highly recommend. You're going to run into a lot of good people at those events, and again, they're free to attend. So there was him. He's a billionaire, and then there were 4 other ones in the room, and 3 of them had become billionaires off of ETH. They had been in on the ICO, and went in heavily with their Bitcoin. They had swapped for the ETH at the ICO. What are the long-term implications of that? I don't know. One of those guys, they were all touting Luna at the time and UST and how great it was, and I was trying to tell people that it was not sustainable and that was a horrible choice to put your money there. And forgot to say I was right 3 months later. It lasted longer than I thought it would. And they always do. Ponzi schemes work great, and you make a bunch of money until you don't, right? As long as you get out before everybody else, then you're okay. But I don't know what happened to those guys. They were very highly leveraged on that deal. So hopefully they were able to unwind it and get out of it before it was a problem. Let's see here. Scroll on down. Man, you guys are awesome here in the chat. Running it up. We'll take 2 more, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. Carla Pitt says, "Hey Jake, hey man, if you had 100K to invest, how would you do it? Multiple accounts or buy all in one single account and then transfer to cold storage? Also, where would you buy crypto from, Coinbase or other?" I like Kraken or Uphold. We have OTC accounts with them, significantly cheaper. If you have a Coinbase Prime account, again, you're going to get a better benefit there, more bang for your buck. And if I had 100K, that's the way I would do it, especially if I was going to put it all in on one transaction, because that is going to give you significantly lower fee for that transaction versus, spreading it out and, trying to do it through a normal exchange. So I would find an OTC desk. Happy to make connections for you at either Kraken or Uphold if that's something you're interested in. I used to talk a lot about Caleb and Brown. I still like Caleb and Brown, especially if you want a broker that you can call and deal with. They have moved their fee to 3.5%. I understand. Look, there's a lot of compliance in Australia, and those guys do a really good job, and they are worth it. But if you're savvy and you can execute transactions yourself, probably doing it through an OTC desk. That's just me, right? The other thing that I will say about Caleb and Brown and why institutional custody is important versus over there is, God forbid something happened to you and you pass away, they're going to liquidate your positions and they're going to send the cash to your loved ones. So they're going to saddle them with the tax implications, and they're not going to have the crypto. They're going to take that crypto. So just be aware of that with Caleb and Brown. Like I said, I like them. I think they do a fantastic job. But in that scenario specifically, not so good. So that's why I prefer, I would deal with us, either Anchorage or Archax, having an institutional custody. We know your wishes. We have your will. We have your beneficiaries. We have your trustee. We have all that stuff in place so that there's no questions. What you wanted happens upon your passing, and your family doesn't get saddled with tax implications. You have somebody that's an advisor that can help them make smart choices. And then, again, the OTC rates that we get are going to be 20 bips on anything that's 6-figure trade. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful for you. But yeah, I would, again, can pass you some contacts if you just want to email info@digitalfamilyoffice.io and get you in contact with Kraken or Uphold for an OTC account. Chadwick says, "Mastermind." I'm super proud of the culture that we have there and the great people like yourself, brother. Let's see. I'm going to take one more. We'll do Larry. Appreciate you being here, Larry. He's good people too. He says, "Congrats to all of us. I agree. What do you think about the ODL wording in Judge Torres' judgment? Is Ripple okay to do business without a sales squeeze?" Attorney Jeremy came out and said that they just need to be aware of how they operate here in the U.S. and they have to make sure that it falls under a couple exemptions. So there's like 5 exemptions that exist for the way that they can go to market with that product here domestically. And they just have to make sure that it's structured the right way. So he said that he could think of 2 immediately offhand of the 5 that were a bit simpler in order for Ripple to use. Again, I just listen to the lawyers that are smarter than me. I think that makes the most sense. If there are exemptions for the way that they can come to market with that product and work with people here, I don't think ODL is just like a huge problem. The majority of the volume here in the U.S. is going to be done with other G7 nations. There are going to be other circumstances, right, where people do small amounts of business with Turkey or Zimbabwe or Argentina or other jurisdictions where the currency is not suitable for holding an Vostro account to be able to settle in. And then XRP may become more important later on for moving value. It might move all the value. And then ODO will become much more meaningful, right? Unless we have liquidity pools and AMMs and we no longer need that product. But I think we will. I think there'll always be a circumstance where Ripple makes money with that product. Otherwise, they wouldn't continue to push it. So I think they figured out how they can operate here domestically without any problems. And I'm excited to see them go ahead and move that direction. And, increase their profit margins, be able to work with those companies here and hopefully, have a public listing on a public stock exchange in the not too distant future. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Appreciate you guys as always. We're going to continue to do these on Mondays and Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. So hope you'll have a blessed evening, and we will see you guys on the next one.